Rose from WMO. Rose is a consultant that is working with us on this workshop. Rose, where are you?
I'm here. Good morning, good afternoon.
Okay, that's Rose Rabasta. Yeah, good to see you. And then we have Maria Bernadette from UNSCAP.
Hi everyone, nice to see you.
And Saji from UNSCAP.
Hello, colleague. This is Sanjay from UNSCAP. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good. Welcome, Sanji. And Sung Eun Kim.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sung Eun Kim. Thank you. Glad to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. We've been communicating a lot. But we hadn't seen each other.
Yeah.
Good to see you now. All right. I think I've introduced everyone who's there. The only thing I'd like to mention is that because of the time difference between Vietnam and the countries where the lecturers are coming from, we are not able to have everybody, all the lecturers, because some of them are sleeping now. The ones from the United States and also Barbados. But I will be coming to that later. For now, I think I would like to take it back to Dr. Horn.
Yes, thank you, Sam, for introducing all the participants and also the lecturers. So now I would like to invite Dr. Đỗ Tiến Anh to give the opening speech.
Dr. Johan Standers, Director of Services Department, WMO, distinguished lecturer and participants. Good morning. So first of all, on behalf of Vietnam Meteorology and Hydrology Administration, I would like to express my sincere thanks to Services Department of WMO and distinguished lecturer to support us to organize this workshop. As the key function in disaster preparedness and prevention community, meteorology and hydrology in Vietnam has received great investment from the government through projects to modernize the meteorology and hydrology, and we also got very huge achievement. However, due to climate change, natural disasters have occurred and will occur with higher intensity and cause more severe impact to human life and environment. And as you may know, October and November 2020 are 2 months in Vietnam have highest storm frequency, and with 4 storms for each month, and of which 6 storms have affected the central provinces in Vietnam. The successive storms caused heavy rains, big floods, flash flood, and landslide in the central region of Vietnam and causing great damage to life and access. Vietnam Meteorological and Hydrological Administration is very honored to organize this very important workshop with participants from different sectors such as national and regional disaster management, national and regional forecaster who currently work in natural disaster preparedness and control. We understand that having a good forecast is not enough to reduce the losses from disaster. We need to work with different stakeholders to communicate the disaster risk to authorities and public. And our forecasting services has big improvement in the last few years. We are now better in answering the question of what the weather will be, but we are still lacking of understanding of what the weather will do. So the VNMHA has changed the way we communicate the warnings. We now mention more about the potential impacts of severe weather. And we have found that by doing that way, the authorities and public understand get much easier. And they now know what they need to prepare ahead of disaster, rather than trying to understand what 100 millimeter of rain or 20 meter per second of wind means. So I hope that from the different point of view of forecasters and disaster management partners, we learn and have better understanding of potential impacts of severe hydromet events. And we will know how to communicate those potential impacts to authorities and public. Therefore, we will have to minimize the losses from natural disaster. So I would like to take this chance on behalf of VietNam to give special thanks to WMO and particular to Dr. Johan Stander, Director of Services Department, who have been contributing and support us step by step from the beginning to have an impact-based forecast and warning system. So I would like to thank all the participants to attend this very first workshop on IBF in Vietnam. I believe that you will learn a lot from distinguished lecturer and expert of WMO. And I would like to wish our distinguished lecturer and guest a very good health, luck, and success. Wish our workshop a very productive practice, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Đỗ Tiến Anh. So now I would like to back to Sam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Huang. I'd like now to request Dr. Johan Stander to give a few remarks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hang Dong Chung, Vice Administrator of the Vietnam Meteorological and Hydrological Administration. Dr. Mai Van Kim, Director General of the National Center for Hydrological Forecasting. Delegates from stakeholder organizations, special welcome to our lecturers, workshop participants. You are very special today. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Secretary General of the World Meteorological Organization, Professor Petri Tsalis, I take this opportunity to thank the Meteorological Service for organizing this workshop during this difficult time of prevailing COVID-19 situation around the globe, forcing us to hold this workshop in a remote way. The workshop is designed to train the staff of the Vietnam Meteorological and Hydrological Administration, the Vietnam Disaster Management Authorities, and other stakeholder organizations to implement impact-based forecasting within Vietnam. I particularly want to congratulate you for choosing to implement impact-based forecasting for your country and getting introduced during the regional IBF WS workshop for Southeast Asia, which was conducted in March 2018 under the WMO Severe Weather Forecasting Project. This is a very important decision on your part, as it will transform how warning services are provided and make it easier for disaster management and other responders to make well-informed decisions guided by likely impacts when responding to weather and climate hazards. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the lecturers from across the world for volunteering to prepare lectures material and to provide lectures remotely for a week while minding their own jobs. I particularly would like to recognize that for most of the lecturers, the live sessions of the workshop will be happening outside their normal working hours, late at night and or early in the morning of the following day. And we are very grateful for your hard work and dedication to ensure that Vietnam gets a chance to implement impact-based forecasting and warning services. I would like to welcome all participants and to stress on the importance of this workshop. This week will be very important for you, as you will be learning new skills in the area of warning and saving lives and livelihoods. I would like therefore to encourage you to make the best of this opportunity especially during the self-guided session, during which you will be expected to make use of workshop resources that have been put at your disposal through the workshop website and the COMET IBF online training platform. Ladies and gentlemen, this workshop is designed to be a kickoff event for the implementation of IBF in Vietnam, and therefore the real work will only start after the workshop is over. To ensure this to happen, time has been provided in this workshop program to develop a workshop that will define actions and activities necessary for VNMHA and stakeholders to carry out. A mechanism to steer the process will also be identified. I would like to encourage you to ensure that your work plan is implemented. In so doing, please do not hesitate to contact the WMO in the future to assist you as necessary. I further wish to humbly request the Meteorological Service to please ensure that all the warnings are dissipated in the CAP format, if not already done, as this will assist us immensely in successfully implementing the Global Multi-Hazard Alert System, or GMAS, as requested by Congress. Finally, I would like to thank Cruise Canada for providing the funding under the Cruise project, which has enabled the sub-project to be implemented. I thank COMET of USA for offering the COMET method platform for this training. Thank you very much. I also wish to thank the WMO colleagues from the Service Department and from the Member Services and Development Department for their collaboration in organizing this event. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I wish you all the success of this workshop. Please stay safe and healthy. I thank you.
Thank you very much. From here, I don't know whether Dr. Huang, you have something you would like to say. Otherwise, you move to the program. Dr. Huang?
No, from our side, maybe, yeah, I just would like to say thank you to WMO, as well as very good support from the Simon, which is able to organize this workshop. And we hope that during this 5 days workshop, we can learn more about how to conduct an IBF warning service in Vietnam, especially to how to develop a cooperation with disaster management authorities to make sure that we can have a better communication, better information to the public. Maybe, yeah, I think we can come back to Sam for the continuing of the program. Thank you.
Okay, here we are. I'm looking for my, excuse me. Oh, there we are. Can you see me? There's something has gone wrong on my side. I don't know whether you can see me or you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see you clearly.
See and hear.
Okay, but I can't see the screen. I don't know what happened.
Sam,
yeah.
Can you excuse me?
Yes, please.
No, I'm just saying, Sam, will you excuse me and participants and lecturers? I need to go to my next session, please.
Dr. Johan,
yes.
Thank you so much. First of
thank
all,
you, Sam.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Very much to the point. I really thank you. We understand that you are a busy man.
Thank you.
You have a nice day, sir.
Keep well,
okay.
colleagues. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll look after this. Okay. Thank you. Oh, now I can see you. Now I can see you. I'm sorry, I had disappeared. Okay, I think from there we can now have a look at the program. As you can see,
Excuse me, Sam.
yes.
Can we have about 2-minute break
Okay,
before
perfect.
we continue the program?
All right, all right, all right. I'll wait for you to get back to me.
Yes, yes.
Okay, enjoy your break. Thank you.
Hi Sam. Yes, we are ready here. So I think now you can start with the briefing.
Okay, we can start with the briefing. For us to do that, I think we can all go to the website. I'll try to share it. If I can't, then you try to open it from that side. Is that okay?
Yes.
The website, because it might be a problem to share the website. Let me try. Hello, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Sam.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Because I have disappeared once again. Something went wrong again. Lam, would you be able to open the website?
Okay, I can open here.
Okay. So, is it open? Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, give me 1 minute.
Okay, fine. Can you see it? I think I'm now sharing.
Oh.
I am
Yes.
sharing the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Good.
We see the
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Okay. Very well. It has worked. Yeah. Okay. So this is the website that we have prepared for you. It contains 3 parts. The first part is the quick links. That's where you can quickly come and open whatever you want. What you're going to see is that we have some links that are alive, like that link about the workshop registration form. But that one is not alive because we don't have the information. So for the ones that are not alive, we are going to link to them as soon as we get the information. So it will be changing, the website will be changing, the content will be changing as we go along. The next part is the background. It says what this workshop is all about. I'm not going to repeat all that and how it's organized. I'll request you to have a look at it, go through it. And then we have the information to participants. And this is where I would like us to concentrate a bit. First of all, we'd like to request you to register. And for you to register, you have the link there. If you click on that link, you're going to open a page where you can put in your information and you'll be directed from the page. If you want to see the workshop program, this is the link to the workshop program. And within the workshop program, you will see the sessions, you will see the objectives, and the expected outcomes of every session, and also the workshop experts and lecturers and the local facilitators. We have 2 local facilitators, you see them, and the timings. The reason why this is important, it's extremely important, is because we have sessions that are live sessions like this one, where you have the lecturers, ourselves, and you are there, and we can have this conversation. But we also have other sessions that are self-guided, where there will be no lecturers. And some of them will be in the morning, like in Vietnam, or in the afternoon, like today in Vietnam. So you need to look at the program because it has all that information. The workshop format, as he said, this is just saying that we have the live sessions and self-guided sessions. And in the self-guided sessions, you'll find that some of the material are in the WMO website, that is this website, or you'll be taken to another website, which is the Comet MetEd platform. This is very important for you to know how to find it, how to log in, have an account there, and you'll be guided on how to go about that. So the self-guided sessions are planned to take place every day, either in the morning or in the afternoon, and instructions or clarification of what will be expected to the participants will be provided during the sessions. So when you get to the Comet Ed platform, you will need to click on it, this sign up, and when you get there, you'll be able to create an account. So, and this will be important for you to be able to use the platform. Then when you're doing the self-guided sessions, you might have a question, something you do not understand. And if that happens, then you can always write a question. And for you to do that, we've given you a link here. This is link to writing questions during self-guided sessions. And when you click on it, you'll be able to write your question. The only thing we'd like to request you is that when you're writing your questions, you write one question and send it, second question and send it, and submit it, sorry. When you do that, it will be okay, instead of doing so many questions and then submitting, right? Then these questions will be responded to the following day or later in the day after that session. In the next live session, we always start with questions. So these are the instructions for live sessions. So they will start either at 9 or 14 hours, but we'd like to open just a little earlier so that we make sure that everybody is connected. And they'll go on for about 3 hours. And we have a 20-minute break. There's enough time provided for a break. When you take the break, the team in Hanoi, that is you people, you'll be able to have your coffee, etc. And then you come back. So we'll start about 30 minutes earlier. We have a local facilitator who will coordinate with the lecturer just in case there's something to be done, like the lecturer might want people to go in a group, and the local coordinator will be coordinating that and forming those groups. Since this is an online workshop, well, we'd like to request that the lecturers give their lectures up to the end. And then after that, we have a question and answer session. And during the time when the workshop is, the lecturer is giving their lectures, the participants can pose questions. I think we can do this on the question and answer facility or on the chat. I think that one will clarify. Yeah. And then the local facilitator, we have the names. They will manage the chat with the support from WMO, and the support from WMO will be provided by Rose. We are also recording all the sessions, and we will share these videos later. So what you see when you go to the program is that we have all the training materials already. It's ready. So you can go in there anytime when you're at home or during the self-guided sessions, and you can look at the material well ahead of time. I know that one of the challenges we might have is probably like us talking too fast in English. So we try to take care of that. At this point, I'll be requesting lecturers to please go slowly when you're talking. And then for the participants, I'd like to request you to try to look at the materials before, that is, before the session, if that is possible. This time it will not be possible, but in the future, since you have the program, you know what is coming, just go to the program, open the material and have a look at it so that you have a chance to understand it better during the workshop. So all the participants who attend the workshop fully will receive a WMO certificate of attendance. And for that, we'll be requesting LAM and the team of coordinators to give us the names of the people who have gone through, give us names, and we check the spelling and everything. We'll do the certificates from here, and then we send them to Vietnam, and you'll be able to print them, already signed. In addition to that, and this is very important, and this is a good thing, in addition to that, you can get another certificate, but this is a technical certificate. On the Comet MedEd platform, you will take a self-guided quiz. That will be on Thursday, and the 3rd of December, 2020. If you receive a score equal to or higher than the pass mark, you will receive a certificate for this particular Comet IBF training. Certificates are provided as PDF files that you can download and print. Please note that you can always retake the quiz if you strive for a higher score. Like, for example, you get a score that's lower than 70, you can always do it again. And then you come out of this workshop with 2 certificates. That's a good thing. Okay, so that is my brief. Would there be a question? Anybody with a question?
Đây là phần chung của ông Sam và anh chị em. Thì chúng ta sẽ có cái website đấy, có tài liệu trên đấy, có 2 người hỗ trợ. Thì hai người hỗ trợ sẽ giúp là quản lý cái câu hỏi các chị có thể hỏi ngay trong lúc mà trực tiếp, thì được mọi người chat vào cái cửa sổ này. Đấy, thì để giáo viên để trả lời, còn nếu không thì các chị có thể submit cái câu hỏi online. Đấy, và trước hoặc sau ông mong muốn là submit online thì sẽ là trả lời vào buổi sáng ngày hôm sau. Còn chứng chỉ nó có 2 loại chứng chỉ, một là chứng chỉ tham dự là của WMO, 2 là chứng chỉ kỹ thuật là vượt qua khóa học IBF của Comet. Cái Comet thì các anh chị phải làm bài quiz vượt qua điểm thì đạt thì mới được, còn nếu không thì không được, nhưng mà mình vẫn có thể, các anh chị vẫn có thể làm lại nhiều lần. Nhưng mà ngày chính là ngày mùng 3, một lần đầu tiên là ngày mùng 3 tháng 12 trước khi kết thúc khóa học. Nếu mà được thì chúng ta sẽ có được cái chứng chỉ, còn nếu không thì có thể làm lại, vẫn được, vẫn theo dương hướng năm luôn.
Học bắt đầu từ 8 giờ nhưng mà trên
9 giờ đến 2 giờ. Còn anh chị có câu hỏi gì nữa không?
Thầy chị có gì hỏi?
Không, tôi hỏi về chương trình nhé. Hỏi về chương trình anh chị rõ chưa ạ? Cái chương trình học kinh tế thì
mới Việt Nam. Sao chúng ta cố gắng đúng không? 9 giờ đến 2 giờ đúng không?
9 giờ sáng và 2 giờ chiều. Bắt đầu là 9 giờ sáng, khi buổi sáng và bắt đầu 2 giờ chiều.
Uống sữa học.
Hi Sam.
Hello.
Yeah, so not many questions. They just care about the time. So I just reconfirm that we have 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, which is start at 9 a.m. in the morning in Vietnam time, and 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
I heard you. Yeah, I heard you explaining. I understood it.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Right. Okay. So without wasting time, let's just kick it off. I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Webster. Elizabeth Webster is from the South African Met Service, and she has been doing a great work in South Africa, taking on training a team and actually implementing impact-based forecasting in South Africa over a period of time. So she has a lot of experience, and we are very lucky to have you, Elizabeth. I'd like to welcome you to start with the introduction to IBF WS.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm going to share my screen, if that's all right.
Okay.
I just want to check if everybody is able to see it.
Yes, we all can see in here in Vietnam.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity that you have given me to share just a bit of an introduction into the impact-based severe weather warning system, what it's about, and we're really just going to touch on a few key topics today and look into a bit more of the details in the next few days of this workshop. As Sam has said, one of the shortfalls, especially for myself, is I do speak fast. So I'm trying to remind myself that I need to slow down. But if I am picking up speed again in the way I'm talking, please feel free to just step in and say, we need you to slow down. But I will try and make a conscious effort to speak a lot slower. All right, so this is really just the introductory presentation. And a lot of this content has come out of the WMO 1150, which Gerald is going to be presenting next. So some of the work you will see might be repeated, but it's being repeated on purpose because we want to emphasize the importance of a few of the key topics. All right, so each year across the globe, we have got hydrometeorological events that cause havoc. These events do result in adverse impacts. So what have we got? We have got forecasts that are issued by the meteorological agencies such as yourself. And these forecasts are issued with increased accuracy as well as longer lead times. So we're getting better and better basically at our jobs as forecasters and issuing warnings far further ahead of time with increased accuracy. However, we have still got lives that are lost. So if we cannot stop a typhoon or a tropical cyclone or from making landfall or a severe thunderstorm from occurring or tornado from occurring, we cannot stop it from occurring or making landfall. But what can we do? So we can prepare. And by doing this, we can prepare for the hazardous weather by taking the necessary actions ahead of time in order to prevent the adverse impacts from occurring. So if we cannot stop the hazardous weather from occurring, we can prepare, though, for those impacts and also to try and make them less, so less hazardous. So what are some of these early actions? Early actions could be something like evacuating communities, so therefore saving lives, digging trenches. Maybe that can assist with draining the water, steering the water in a certain direction. Also, I know here in South Africa, it's quite big for us to clear water drains ahead of our summer rainfall season because we have a lot of flooding from stormwater drains that are blocked. So these early actions can be taken ahead of time in order to prevent adverse impacts. But what can trigger the early actions? So what can be done so that these early actions can be triggered? An early warning system is needed. So an early warning system, not just any early warning system, but one that is understood by the end user, can assist with triggering early actions. As I mentioned right in the beginning of this presentation, a lot of this work is taken from the WMO 1150, and one of the quotes that comes out of this says that it is no longer enough to provide a good weather forecast or warning. People are now demanding information about what to do to ensure their safety and protect their property. So people are changing their way in which they see the weather and the way in which they expect a service to be provided. So what have we got? We have got a gap between the scientists, so the meteorologist at the hydrometeorological service, and the end user, which is the general public. So because people aren't understanding our warning, there is a clear gap between the two. So in order to bridge the gap, what do we need? We need strong collaboration. And the first organizations I want to speak about is strong collaboration between the meteorological service and the disaster management agencies. So if we've got strong collaboration between these two services, that can really assist with having an effective early warning system. Another way in which to bridge the gap is good communication. And this good communication is between the meteorological services once again, as well as the general public. So good communication in terms of communicating warnings that are easy to understand by the general public, non-scientific. So we want to remove that meteorological jargon so that the general public can understand what our warnings mean and therefore can take those necessary actions ahead of time. In the opening, we heard this statement already being said, but I think it is important to reiterate it or to repeat it and to just briefly explain what impact-based forecasting is all about. But I think it is quite well understood around that room from the opening statement we heard earlier. So we would like to move from what the weather will be, which is based on meteorological thresholds, to what the weather will do. So we want to move away from giving information stating that 50 millimeters is expected in a 24-hour period or a 35-knot wind is anticipated, but rather to say we are rather going to expect roads to be flooded, communities could be cut off, and therefore people can understand these warnings a lot better. So what is impact-based forecasting? It is the forecasting of weather hazards and the impacts that these hazards will have on society. Warning levels are based on the vulnerability of certain areas. So maybe a certain area can withstand a lot more rainfall or can withstand stronger winds because the buildings have been built according to a different level. But most importantly here, impact-based forecasting is the communicating of these warnings in plain, simple language to stakeholders and the general public. So we want to make sure that everybody understands what the weather will do. Internationally, the WMO said there's a disconnect between the warning of hydromet events and the understanding of their impacts. The UK have also said weather warnings should only be issued if severe weather is expected to have an impact. And the Dutch have said weather warnings need to be tailored more towards the end user. And I think that's been clear throughout this presentation so far, as we're really trying to understand the user of our warnings, who would in essence be the general public. So in 2011, the UK Met Office implemented impact-based warnings. The WMO guidelines, which Gerald will be going into a lot more detail, they've developed a guideline document, and there is an updated version, which I think Gerald will give us the latest information on that, which we are expecting soon. There are various versions of impact-based forecasting around the world, and many pilot projects also currently underway. So why is there a need for impact-based forecasting? So scientific advances have led to the provision of reliable forecast at increased accuracy as well as lead time. But lives are still lost and socioeconomic costs rise due to the lack of appreciation and understanding of the impact. So once again, an accurate and timely warning does not guarantee the safety of life. There is a need for collaboration with disaster managers and the public to ensure appropriate actions. We need to include vulnerability information, to minimize adverse impacts. Sometimes there is still a need for thresholds, but this is really only in certain instances. Hence, the use of impact-based forecasting to convey the impact of the hazard to those at risk. In South Africa, we have had a challenge from our disaster managers, which we did a few surveys a few years ago, and the results of those surveys came back that the disaster managers are just wanting there's a clear requirement for matter-of-fact information. So they don't want scientific information. They want non-scientific, to the point information that will also minimize the need for complex interpretation. They don't want to have to take our warning and try and have to decode it and try and understand what we're really trying to say. They just want non-scientific information that is to the point. There is also a need for improving communication to users to enable their effective decision making. One of our disaster managers said, and this quote has become something we use quite frequently across the world, he just said, in all honesty, just tell me what is going to happen, when, where, and how serious it is. That's all he really wanted to know. He didn't want to know all the science and the amount of rainfall or the wind speeds. He just wanted to know what will those wind speeds do and what can he do then to prepare for that. So warnings are only issued when the hazardous weather is expected to have an impact. So certain areas that are prone to conditions will not have a warning. So if the area is resilient to certain weather hazards, then a warning will not be issued. We do not want to overwarn a certain area and people then become immune or become very disillusioned and do not act upon warnings in the future. Warnings take into account vulnerability of certain areas. Possible vulnerability could be communities that live on floodplains. They'll be more vulnerable than a community that is just living in another area. Warnings also take into account sensitivities. An example of a sensitivity is something like roadworks. I often refer to a sensitivity as something that is here today and gone tomorrow. Another example is a concert, a live concert, where you've got a large gathering of people. We're also going to go into this in the next few slides. I'll show an example of a few more events that could be sensitivities. So this is where the forecaster has to undertake a paradigm shift. It really is a different focus for a forecaster now, because we as forecasters, and I come from that background, we are used to issuing warnings according to a meteorological threshold. But now we need to think about certain different aspects. So for an example, if we're looking at rain, what area is the rainfall expected to affect? Is it mainly a farmland? Is it a densely populated city? So a farmland would be maybe an open area, less of an impact compared to a densely populated city. Is this area prone to these conditions? What time is the heaviest rainfall expected to occur? Is it during rush hour? Here in South Africa, a Monday morning, if we have rainfall on a Monday morning, the impact will be a lot higher because there'll be a lot more road accidents compared to maybe a Saturday afternoon where there's a lot fewer cars on the main freeways. Any pre-existing weather conditions? Is the ground already saturated because of recent rainfall? That could also increase the impact level because you'll expect further flooding. Then it won't be necessarily just those areas that are prone to flooding, maybe a low-lying bridge, but rather a larger area could expect some flooding if there's already been some recent rainfall. And here are these sensitivities that I've spoken about, any major events expected to take place. For example, a concert, as I already mentioned, a sporting event. The image here in the bottom, where you can see some bicycles in the center image at the bottom, is we've got a well-known cycling event that takes place in South Africa called the Cape August. But in Cape Town, where this race was going to take place, frequently we have strong winds. However, in this particular scenario a few years ago, we had strong winds expected on the race day. So that was a sensitivity that therefore resulted in a higher impact, just because there was a lot of bicycles rather expected to be out on the road. So thousands of bicycles, and they actually had to cancel the race. But on any other day, when you're not expecting a race such as this, the impact would have been a lot lower. It would have more than likely just been business as usual for the city of Cape Town. Elections is another sensitivity that you have to now consider because we've got temporary structures. So tents, if you've got a severe thunderstorm, a strong wind event moving through, temporary structures such as tents are then a problem. They become a hazard. Also, if you've got people queuing during elections and a severe thunderstorm moves through, those people are therefore more vulnerable because they are out in the open. To explain a bit better about what is meant by vulnerabilities, I'm going to give an example of a formal versus an informal settlement. So, a comparison of two communities with differing levels of vulnerability due to the risk of flooding. So we've got an informal settlement on the left, and on the right, more of a formal settlement. And I've never been to Vietnam myself, but I'm sure you've also got similar situations like this that you can relate to. You've got similar areas. So if we've got a thunderstorm that moves through both of these areas, same type of thunderstorm, what will happen to the informal settlement? More than likely, we will see a lot of flooding with the informal settlement. As opposed to in the city or the formal settlement, what might occur there is just business as usual. Proper stormwater drains could be in place in the formal settlement, and therefore the water is able to drain away quite quickly and effectively. As compared to the informal settlement, where you've got pooling of water and a lot of flooding, and these homes could therefore even be destroyed at certain times. So severe weather conditions leading to serious impacts in many places, but those same hazard could result in limited impacts elsewhere, so depending on the vulnerability of that area. Also, it is important with communication with impact-based forecasting. A threshold warning, for an example, could say heavy rain of more than 50 mils is expected in a 24-hour period. But the end user, those sitting at home, could just say, well, what does that actually mean to me? So the way in which we communicate these warnings is very important. We need to change from this threshold warning to rather stating something like a medium likelihood of significant impacts or high likelihood of minor impacts, and show what these impacts could be. This is a very brief introduction to the matrix table. This is what we are using in South Africa, so it might look different in other parts of the world. But the main purpose that I've kept this slide in here is just to show that the impact forecast is now a combination of the likelihood and of the impact. It might be a bit confusing at this point because it's just an introduction to this matrix table, but we will, in the days to come, have a much better understanding of this matrix table and will become more like second nature to everybody in this workshop. The impact level, as I said, is the combination of the likelihood and the impact. On the impact side of things, so on that horizontal axis, that's determined by our impact tables. And in tomorrow's session, I'm going to be working on some impact tables with everybody during that live afternoon session. So this is also something that looks very new, but don't worry, by tomorrow, you'll have your own impact tables that we can work with. So that's done in collaboration with our disaster managers, and I'm pleased to hear that in this workshop, we do have some disaster managers and forecasters there. So that's very important for tomorrow's sessions. So as I mentioned, the impact level is determined by the impact table with information given by the forecaster, well, more the disaster managers, and then the likelihood comes in with the forecaster. So the forecaster is now going to assist with what is the likelihood of that impact occurring. We've got a few factors that affect impact and likelihood. So the impact could be the time of day, as I've said, rush hour, that type of thing. Time of year. Are there festivals? Is it during Christmas, the holiday season? When is there a lot more people moving around? Any antecedent conditions, rural versus urban or formal versus informal? And any non-weather factors, as I have mentioned about sporting events or concerts, anything like that. The likelihood is the forecast uncertainty, as well as most likely scenario and reasonable worst case. This is a new thing that we are mentioning here in the likelihood, the last 2 bullets, but also in tomorrow's session, I'm doing 2 sessions tomorrow, we're going to explain exactly what we mean by most likely scenario, as well as the reasonable worst case scenario. So don't worry if you're not too familiar with that, we will get into that tomorrow. So what does this all result in? An impact-based warning service will result in a warning that is easy to understand. It is color-coded, easy to translate. From a South African perspective, we have 11 official languages, so it is very difficult for us to translate all our warnings into these 11 official languages. But by translating colors, it's far more easier than trying to translate the words such as watch or advisory or anything like that. It combines the level of impact with the likelihood of that impact occurring. Warnings are unique to different hazards, so rainfall or snow or wind. And there's a joint ownership of warnings with disaster management. I've spoken quite a lot about how important it is to have collaboration with our disaster managers. So that also is vital during this warning system development. So the benefits, and to conclude, an impact-based severe weather warning service is a user-orientated, easy to understand, risk-based early warning system that is adapted for specific country conditions. So what we have done in South Africa, or what the UK Met Office have done, or what the Bureau of Meteorology have done in Australia, everybody adapts it slightly for their own country conditions, and that is perfectly fine. We need to adjust it to make it work for your country, but with the basics still in place. It requires strong collaboration with partners, and that will result in joint ownership of warnings. At this stage, mainly in most of the countries, it is being introduced in disaster risk reduction, but can be extended to other spheres like the energy or agriculture or retail industry. I think the UK Met Office are looking into retail and things like that, but I stand to be corrected. It supports and guides the decision-making process in disaster management centres. We have found that quite a lot in South Africa, that it is assisting disaster managers significantly during their decision-making processes. So in closing, successful impact-based forecasting requires collaboration with partners using their expertise, knowledge, and data. So all in all, together we can make a difference with using all the necessary partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that presentation. I would say it's very clear. It's very clear and easy to understand. You put together very nice slides. I'd like to tell the participants that you can look at this presentation again if you wish. It's already linked from the program. So if you click on the program from the website, and you get on the program, you'll find it there. So thanks again, Elizabeth. At this point, probably it's good to ask, does anybody have a question? Ram, can I take it back to you if you wish to explain a bit, and then you see whether you have any questions?
Yes, thanks, Sam. Về cái phần vừa rồi thì như cô Elizabeth cũng nhấn mạnh cái phần mà cái dự báo tác động của chúng ta là như nào. Thì các anh chị cũng có một cái bức tranh chung nhất về cái dự báo tác động, tức là gì là các cái thông tin mà chúng ta đưa ra bên ngoài thì nó sẽ không còn sử dụng nhiều các cái thuật ngữ về khí tượng nữa. Ví dụ như là bao nhiêu mm trên 24 giờ hay là bao nhiêu tốc độ gió bao nhiêu thì ra bên ngoài là người dân rất là khó hiểu. Và người dân bây giờ mong muốn là gì là với cái lượng mưa hay là gió như thế thì nó có ý nghĩa gì đối với họ, gây ngập hay gây tốc mái nhà hay gây đổ cây cối, và cái lời khuyên cho họ là gì. Nếu mà chỉ nghe mưa 50 hay 100 mm cho cái khu vực ABC này đấy thì họ không hiểu là cái ý nghĩa đấy sẽ như thế nào rồi. Và khi mà đánh giá cái tác động thì như trong bài giảng thì người ta phải tính đến rất nhiều yếu tố. Rồi thời gian trong ngày có phải giờ cao điểm hay không, trong thời gian trong năm, mùa trong năm. Thế rồi thì cái đối tượng, cái khu vực mà có mưa chẳng hạn, nói về mưa là khu vực nào, đô thị với các cái nhà kiên cố hay là nông thôn đối với các cái nhà dễ bị tốc mái, các khu vực mà thường xuyên ngập úng chẳng hạn. Đấy, thì tất cả những đấy chúng ta phải đưa vào xem xét và phải đưa ra cái chú trọng hơn cái tác động, cái lời khuyên cho người dân là như nào, cái ảnh hưởng như thế nào. Và cũng một cái rất là quan trọng mà như cô đề cập là cái matrix, cái bảng table ấy, thì là gì, là nó sự kết hợp của hai yếu tố, một là cái tác động và hai là cái khả năng, cái xác suất xảy ra hiện tượng thời tiết đấy. Thì cái mà tác động đấy thì như trong bài đề cập đến một cái vấn đề mà rất là quan trọng, và cũng là tại sao mà chúng ta trong cái lớp học này chúng ta cần có các anh chị ở bên phòng chống thiên tai. Đấy là gì, là giữa khí tượng thủy văn và phòng chống thiên tai của chúng ta phải hợp tác, phải chia sẻ, phải trao đổi thường xuyên, communicate thường xuyên để nắm bắt được là ví dụ với cái mưa ở vùng này hay vùng kia, thời gian này thời gian kia thì cái đối tượng chịu rủi ro là gì. Tại vì là chính là cái đối tượng chịu rủi ro nó mới quy định cho chúng ta là tác động lớn hay nhỏ, nhiều hay ít, và cụ thể các tác động là gì, do tàu thuyền, do nuôi trồng thủy sản, hay do giao thông vận tải, do sạt lở vân vân. Cho nên là trong suốt đời khóa học này thì cô vừa trình bày cái impact table ấy. Đấy, cái này là con cái chúng ta sẽ dùng thường xuyên trong cái lớp học, trong khóa học lần này, và nó chính là cái sự kết hợp giữa thông tin của hai mảng, một là khí tượng thủy văn, hai là cái lĩnh vực phòng chống thiên tai. Cũng sơ lược mấy cái nét như thế. Đấy, và cụ thể với cái nhấn mạnh cuối cùng, cái ý cuối cùng của cô là gì, là đối với cả dự báo tác động là bắt buộc chúng ta phải có sự phối kết hợp giữa hai lĩnh vực. Bản thân khí tượng không, chúng ta cũng không thể đánh giá hết được các cái tác động. Và nếu mà với bản thân các anh ở bên phòng thiên tai không thì cũng không thể đánh giá hết được các cái tác động. Cho nên là chúng ta sẽ cùng phải hợp tác để có được cái lời khuyên hay cái thông điệp cuối cùng cho người dân, cho chính quyền địa phương hay cho các ban chỉ đạo, ban chỉ huy của địa phương là gì. Đấy là cái mà quan trọng nhất. Vì với cái bài vừa rồi thì các anh chị có thể xem lại trên cái link ở trên trang web, link PowerPoint của cô Elizabeth ở trên trang web, chúng ta có thể xem lại. Ngay bây giờ thì các anh chị nếu mà có câu hỏi nhanh, câu hỏi gì đó về cái bài giảng vừa rồi, các anh chị có thể hỏi, chúng ta hỏi trực tiếp luôn. Vâng, mình
thì đối với Thừa Thiên Huế thì năm vừa rồi thì tôi thấy cái nội dung này rất là phù hợp. Tuy nhiên là cũng có qua cái bài của cô đấy thì có thể chia sẻ là cái khung pháp lý ấy, rồi khung pháp lý để mà cách bảo tác động này như thế nào, những cái điều đó. Bởi này, bởi vì hiện nay chúng ta đang sử dụng cái khung pháp lý của cảnh báo không á, còn tác động như thế nào thì chưa gọi là mình chưa có một cái pháp lý để làm. Ví dụ như mình cảnh báo cho tác động, nhưng mà lỡ khi nó tác động nhỏ hay ít thì như thế nào. Thì ví dụ như đơn giản cái cục điện nổ đấy, rồi chúng ta nhỏ máy đấy thì chúng ta nói là tác động, nhưng mà nếu giả sử như mình cảnh báo là tác động như vậy là có gầy không gầy, nhưng mà thực tế nó sẽ ra cao hơn thì ai là chưa được nhiều như thế nào. Nghĩa là cái không pháp lý đưa ra
ý không pháp lý ở đây theo ý anh hiểu là cái
cơ sở pháp lý để mà thực hiện cái này ở một số cái nước mà đã thực hiện rồi.
Vâng. Okay, so we have a question from so he's a disaster manager from Thừa Thiên Huế, from a province. So he wonder whether we need a kind of like political agreement between the weather department and the disaster management department to like officially issue that kind of cooperation between the weather forecast and the disaster management to make sure that when we issue the warning for the impact, for example, of a thunderstorm, so what should we do, and what is the responsibility of weather forecast department and the disaster management department in issuing the impact-based warning?
Elizabeth, please.
Thank you. Yes, so I'm not sure if I'm the correct person to answer about should there be a political agreement between the Weather Service and the Disaster Management Agency? Sam, do you have any knowledge? If you can come in?
Yes, I can. And then I'll also ask, I also request Gerald to listen in and also comment. That's the whole point. This is an extremely good question that you have asked there. That is, how do we underpin the understanding between Met Service and the disaster management, and also what are the responsibilities that are going to be there, what's going to be expected of the disaster management, what's going to be expected of the Met Service. This is the whole point, and this is the starting point, where you are sitting at the same table and seeing how you work together. So one of the things that will come out of your discussion is, hopefully, is a memorandum of understanding, so that you draw everything clearly, state all that needs to be done, and then support the memorandum of understanding with standard operating procedures. That is to say, when this happens, then the action to take is this one. So it should all go very well. There will be a session at the end, towards the end of this workshop, I think on Friday, where we'll talk about this in a little more detail. Gerard, would you have something you would like to add?
Thank you, Sam. Yes, in fact, I'm covering some of this ground in my next presentation, which will come very shortly, but it's a critical point that there be a very good understanding between the Met Service on the one hand and the emergency management community on the other, as to who has what responsibility, as to where, there has to be really excellent communication to begin with. And that's communication that doesn't start on the day of the disaster, but starts as it is now with you, sitting around the table to think about how we should work together, how we can best deliver the service to the users, to the citizens, and who takes what responsibility. And ideally, for an impact-based warning, it should be a warning coming from both the Met Service and the Emergency Management Service together, who have both discussed it and agreed on it, and it goes out in both of their names. So it carries a really strong message to the people that this warning has been generated and is being delivered with a lot of technical expertise and has a lot of authority behind it. Because ultimately we want to try and influence people's behavior in a good way. We want them to understand what is likely possible to happen and to behave in a way that helps to put themselves and their families and their lives and livelihoods into safety. So this is a key point. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Gerald. Lam, probably you can explain.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Sam and Gerald. So yeah, I can get your very important point about the agreement on what we will communicate to the public, what is the main, the key risk that we need to inform to the public, and what is the target users that we need to inform as early as possible to make sure that we have a safety action before the hazards come.
Lam?
Yes.
You want to do that in Vietnamese, maybe?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Đấy thì như ý kiến của hai ông ấy thì các anh chị chắc cũng nắm được phần nào, tức là thứ nhất là cái câu hỏi của anh Minh là rất là hay. Thực ra câu hỏi này là câu hỏi khó mà ông ấy muốn để ra ngày cuối cùng. Trong ngày thứ 6 thì chúng ta sẽ có một cái thảo luận để xem cái hướng phát triển, cái hướng đi để có được đạt đến một cái gì đó tác động là như thế nào. Thế nhưng mà cái cơ bản nhất ấy, thì đây như ông Sam ông nói là giữa khí tượng thủy văn, giữa dự báo thời tiết, dự báo thiên tai và các anh chị bên phòng chống thiên tai là chúng ta phải ngồi với nhau và thống nhất một cái nguyên tắc hoạt động. Nó có thể là các cái MOU, cái ký kết hợp tác giữa hai bên, và trong đó chỉ rõ cái quy trình vận hành của chúng ta, ví dụ từ dự báo thời tiết như nào, gió bão ra làm sao, mưa như nào, đến các anh phòng thiên tai là đánh giá các cái rủi ro của các cái khu vực ra làm sao, và quan trọng nhất cuối cùng là gì, là chúng ta sẽ thống nhất một cái message, một cái thông điệp để gửi đến các chính quyền địa phương, gửi đến các người dân thông qua các kênh truyền tin khác nhau. Có thể là người của khí tượng thủy văn sẽ truyền thông điệp đấy, hoặc người của anh bên phòng thiên tai truyền thông điệp đấy thông qua đài truyền hình, thông qua đài tiếng nói, vân vân. Nhưng mà với điều kiện rất quan trọng là thông điệp nó phải thống nhất, và nó là sự sản phẩm của sự kết hợp giữa hai bên. Đấy. Sau khi đánh giá được cái khả năng xảy ra các cái cấp gió khác nhau, các cái cấp mưa khác nhau, rồi sau đấy là các cái tác động đối với các đối tượng khác nhau, thì chúng ta sẽ phải thống nhất với nhau cái thông điệp gì quan trọng nhất trong ngày hôm nay, trong đợt thiên tai này, vân vân. Đấy, thì ở đây ông Zero có nói là cái điểm quan trọng nhất là chúng ta phải xác định được cái vai trò và xác lập được một cái mối quan hệ về quy trình vận hành để có thể có được cái thông tin cuối cùng là đánh giá cái tác động và truyền các cái cảnh báo hay các cái thông tin về chúng ta phải làm gì, chúng ta nên làm gì, cần làm ra làm sao cho các cái đối tượng chịu tác động khác nhau trong là kịp thời và đảm bảo cái hiệu quả ngon. Rồi, còn có câu hỏi nữa không ạ?
Okay, Lam, you are through?
Yes, I think at the moment we don't have any more questions.
Okay.
Yes.
Lam, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
On the way to proceed, do you think it would be a good idea to stop somewhere in the middle of the presentation? I don't know whether on every slide, whether that might be too much, or to just give you time to explain something, or you can always say, let me explain that one. What did you like? So that we don't have to go all the way until we finish. Because the explanation might want to go with the slide, especially if the slide has got an illustration.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. Maybe it's not slide by slide.
Yeah.
Then we can stop somewhere in the middle, or whenever we finish an important part. So
okay.
Then the lecturer can stop, and I can make some brief summary.
Okay, then I leave it between you and Gerard to coordinate to the best effect, for best effect. Right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'd like to welcome Gerard Fleming. Gerard Fleming has been with the Public Weather Services program of World Meteorological Organization for many years. In a lot of ways, he has actually helped to shape the program. And so Gerard is a professional that we respect a lot for his contribution and always working very hard. And we are very lucky again to have Gerard to introduce this publication, that is WMO number 1150. Welcome, Gerard. Gerard, your mic, you are.
Thank you for reminding me.
All right.
It's so easy to get that wrong. And thank you, colleagues, for coming and your attention. I'll try and share my screen if that's okay. Now, can you just confirm, Sam, that this is visible?
Yes, now
yes.
we can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
My network is a little bit dodgy, so we hope it'll hold up well. So what I want to do in the next while, and I'll stop occasionally as Sam suggested to allow you to maybe give some description to our colleagues who as I understand, would not fully understand my English, but I'll try and go slowly. So we'll give an introduction to this book. So it looks like, try and get this. Here we go. Come on. Here we are. So this is WMO number 1150, Guidelines on Multi-Hazard Impact-Based Forecast and Warning Services. This book was published, it's a short book, it's about 40 pages, published about 4 years ago or 5 years ago now. In fact, we are just finishing work on a second edition, which hopefully we will finalize within the next month or two, which will add to the information in this book. And if you want to find it, you can download it easily from WMO for free. Easiest thing to do is go to Google or whatever your favorite search engine is and just type in WMO 1150, and that will bring you straight to a link which you see on the very top there, and then you can download it as PDF and examine it on your screen or print a copy if you prefer a printed copy. So it's very easy to access this publication. So the case for impact-based forecasting, why should we do this? So, and this has already been said in the introduction and by Elizabeth, we can do good weather forecasts now, much better than when I started as a forecaster nearly 4 decades ago. We can do very good weather forecasts, but even still, and you know this particularly in your own part of the world where the weather can be very severe, people want more information about what to do, what they should do to protect themselves and to protect their property, to ensure their safety and protect their property. And many people, very sadly, still lose their lives, and the costs associated with weather events, any hydrometeorological hazard, floods, thunderstorms, tropical cyclones, storms, winds, drought, heat wave, they all continue to rise. And that's at least in part because people don't really appreciate and understand what the impacts are going to be, what is going to happen because of the weather. So the question for Met Services is, how should we change what we're doing to try and to solve this problem? What can we do that's different and better? Because even though we can be much more accurate and timely in sending out our warnings, that does not guarantee safety of life or does not by itself prevent economic problems. We need to work more effectively. We from the community of meteorological and hydrological services need to work more effectively with disaster managers, emergency managers, and with the public, and with the users and stakeholders. And we'll talk a bit about who they are. And we need to help people understand how those hazards are going to affect them so that people can take the proper actions and the best actions guided by the professionals. This can be done subjectively, and we'll talk a little bit about that approach, working with users to understand their situation. Another way, maybe a bit more advanced, is objectively through actually developing mathematical models of impacts and using data sets around vulnerability and exposure. We'll discuss those concepts in a few moments. And really, successful impact-based forecasting needs collaboration with others who have extra knowledge, because in the Met services, we do not have all of the knowledge we need to do this work properly. We don't know the exposure of peoples. We don't have the data of where the peoples are, where the critical infrastructure is located. But a lot of this information is there. It's there with the local authorities, with the emergency management people. So we really need to develop partnerships with other organizations, particularly as you are doing now today, sitting down with people from emergency management to think about these problems together. So I stop here perhaps and just let you summarize for a moment or two to colleagues in Vietnamese.
Yes, thank you, Zero. So yeah, I will give a brief summary for our colleagues here. Về cái phần này thì như ông ấy vừa trình bày thì trước tiên là xuất phát từ cái nhu cầu mà hướng tới dự báo tác động, thì Tổ chức Khí tượng Thế giới đã biên soạn một cái tài liệu số 1150 về hướng dẫn xây dựng một cái hệ thống dự báo cảnh báo đa thiên tai dựa trên tác động. Thì trong đấy thì có quyển này cũng khá là ngắn, nó khoảng 40 trang, các anh chị có thể search trên Google. Và tôi cũng nhiều lần gửi đến cho các anh chị ở trung tâm dự báo rồi, là hướng dẫn từng bước một để chúng ta có thể được có một cái hệ thống dự báo dựa trên tác động. Và trong này thì họ ở đây nhấn mạnh đến một số cái yếu tố. Đấy là gì? Là thứ nhất là ngày nay thì cái chất lượng dự báo thời tiết thì đang tăng dần, tốt hơn rất nhiều so với ngày xưa, nhưng mà một điều dễ nhận thấy là nó, nếu chỉ có dự báo thời tiết tốt thì không đảm bảo cho cái việc là hạn chế các cái thiệt hại. Tức là nói đơn giản là nếu chúng ta dự báo đúng quỹ đạo bão, đúng cường độ bão vào đúng chỗ đấy, nhưng nếu mà chỉ có dừng lại ở đấy thì vẫn cứ thiệt hại. Lý do ở đây chính là gì? Là chúng ta chưa tính đến các cái đối tượng chịu cái tác động, cái rủi ro đấy. Mà ở đây với cái thông tin như bây giờ thì theo hướng dẫn đã đô thì có thể có hai cách làm. Một là chúng ta sẽ có hợp tác như lúc trước ông có nói đến cái biên bản hợp tác giữa khí tượng với từng đơn vị một, khí tượng với y tế, khí tượng với giao thông, với thủy sản vân vân, để chúng ta có thể đánh giá rủi ro cho từng đối tượng. Đấy là cách thứ nhất. Cách thứ hai thì chúng ta sẽ dùng cái gọi là cái phương pháp chung, đấy là gì? Đánh giá dựa trên cái tính rủi ro, cái vulnerability và cái tính phơi lộ, cái exposure. Là gì? Là chúng ta có thể dựa vào các cái cơ sở số liệu về dân cư, về hạ tầng, về giao thông, rồi các khu nuôi trồng thủy sản, tàu thuyền vân vân, chúng ta sẽ đánh giá được cái tính rủi ro. Cái thứ hai là chúng ta sẽ đánh giá được cái tính phơi lộ, tức là xem là thời gian nào để kéo dài bao nhiêu lâu, bão đi nhanh hay đi chậm, gió mạnh lên từ bao giờ đến bao giờ, mưa lớn như nào vân vân, để chúng ta có thể chồng chập các cái thông tin đấy lên các cái thông tin về khí tượng thủy văn để chúng ta có thể đánh giá được cái tác động cuối cùng. Thế thì cái slide cuối cùng mà ông ấy dừng ở đây thì cái mà nhấn mạnh nhất để mà chúng ta có được một cái dự báo tác động tốt đấy là chúng ta phải có thì bằng cách có hợp tác song phương với từng lĩnh vực một, từng đối tượng chịu rủi ro một. Đấy, hoặc là như các anh ở tỉnh thì là đối với cả từng cái quận huyện hay từng khu vực một. Hoặc là cái thứ hai là chúng ta sẽ có hết một cái cơ sở dữ liệu chung trên để chúng ta có thể đánh giá chồng chập các cái lớp thông tin, để chúng ta có thể đánh giá được cái rủi ro, để từ đấy là ra được các cái cảnh báo về tác động của thiên tai. Đấy là cái nhấn mạnh nhất. Mà với các cái thông tin này thì ông ấy khẳng định là một đơn vị không thể làm được. Bản thân ví dụ khí tượng thủy văn, mặc dù cái hướng dẫn này là của Tổ chức Khí tượng Thế giới, nhưng mà cũng nhấn mạnh rằng là một mình cơ quan khí tượng sẽ không thể thực hiện được, mà phải có sự hỗ trợ, sự hợp tác song phương, đa phương với các cái lĩnh vực khác, chúng ta mới có thể có được một hệ thống dự báo tác động tốt. Đấy là Yes, I finished my summary, so you can continue with your lecture.
Thank you very much. It's very kind of you and very useful, I hope, for me certainly, and for your colleagues that you take this responsibility. Thank you. So, the guidelines which I have mentioned, this book 1150, it's really like a roadmap to help Met Services to move from this just doing weather forecasts and warnings to doing this impact-based forecast and warning services. And there's another WMO publication, a much more extensive and longer publication called WMO Strategy for Service Delivery and its Implementation Plan, which is also a very good document if you want to help to assess how advanced you are, because it gives you tests to see where your country is or your Met Service is on a spectrum from not developed through to developed through to advanced. And you can see that and do a self-test, and if you're at a certain level, it gives you very clear direction about how to move to the next level, the next highest level in service delivery. So that's like a useful document also. But the question we should ask today in this first session of this week is why we want to move from weather forecasts and warnings to impact-based forecast and warning services. And I think a couple of words important here. Impact-based, of course, to understand impacts and to understand what the weather will do, but also the concept of services. We're providing a service to our citizens and to the other professional groups who work to help keep our citizens safe and to do it in a professional way. So key ideas. Hazard, just some definitions. So this is the element that poses a threat. It could be, and very often is in Vietnam, a tropical cyclone. It could be a flood, it could be a drought, heat wave, thunderstorm, lightning, whatever. So this is the thing which we have no control over, which comes from nature. Uncertainty, our knowledge of the atmosphere, and if, as many Met Services are, also have responsibility for seismic events, our knowledge of what happens underneath the ground in terms of earthquakes and so on. There's much that we do not know. There is a lot of uncertainty, and we must recognize that we do not have complete knowledge of the things which we are trying to forecast and make warnings. Exposure. Elizabeth talked something about this, but exposure is who or what may be affected in an area where a hazard may occur. So are people exposed? If they live on the coast, they're exposed. If they live close to the banks of a river, they're exposed. They're living in the floodplain. It could be some infrastructure like a hospital or perhaps a power plant or a communications network facility which is located in an exposed area. Again, perhaps could be liable to flooding, be liable to lightning strikes or whatever. And then vulnerability is the damage that can be done when something bad happens, so that the damage can be slight. Let's say if there's a storm and the house might lose a few tiles from the roof, that's not such a big problem. But if a tree falls on the house and knocks a wall, that's a much bigger problem. Then the house has to be rebuilt. And if a flood comes and floods the house and destroys the material inside it, that's an even bigger problem. So vulnerability is about how much damage can be done by things that can happen, that can come from nature. So because these are important, I might just stop here and one more, sorry, risk. Risk is where we total up between exposure and vulnerability and the hazard, the probability and the magnitude or the size of the harm that is possible to humans, their livelihoods and their assets because of exposure and vulnerability to a hazard. So this in a sense, is where we come to the possible impacts. So, because these are important, I stop here and just allow you to discuss those in Vietnamese, perhaps. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Zero. Về cái phần này thì có lẽ là ông cũng nói thêm đến một cái tài liệu nữa của WMO là cái tài liệu 1129, tức là cái chiến lược của WMO để có thể phát triển một cái dịch vụ khí tượng thủy văn và hướng đến cái kế hoạch hành động. Thế thì có lẽ là cái này thì anh Tuấn thì nếu anh em tìm hiểu tài liệu này thì ông ở trong cái tài liệu này thì có thể mình trả lời các câu hỏi khảo sát đây sẽ có thể đánh giá được cái mức độ tiên tiến của cái hệ thống của mình đến đâu. Nó ở mức độ not develop hay là advanced. Đấy, thì mình biết là cái đây chính là cái việc mà chúng ta ra các bản tin rồi truyền các thông tin đến người dân xem là chúng ta đánh giá chúng ta đang ở mức độ nào. Còn quay trở lại với cả cái hướng dẫn này thì về nó có cái phần về cái effect base ấy. Thì sẽ có mấy cái yếu tố mà chúng ta phải tính đến khi mà thực hiện cái đó tác động. Đầu tiên là chính là bản thân cái thiên tai cái này thì chúng ta đều biết rồi, bản thân nó là mạnh hay yếu, là diện rộng hay diện hẹp vân vân. Và cái thứ hai là chúng ta phải thừa nhận đấy là cái sai số dự báo, cái forecast uncertainty, cái này là cái không thể tránh khỏi. Thì chúng ta phải đánh giá được cái trong từng trường hợp là cái xác suất hay cái sai số của nó ở mức nào. Đấy, chúng ta tự tin chắc vào dự báo hay là chúng ta có những cái xác suất nó khác, hoặc là cái dự báo chúng ta nó tùy từng cơn bão, tùy từng đợt mưa mà chúng ta có các cái độ tin cậy khác nhau. Cái thứ ba là cái exposure, tức là cái phơi lộ, tức là chúng ta phải đánh giá được là ai ở đâu hoặc là nơi nào là phải chịu tác động của thiên tai đấy, rồi đến cái tính dễ tổn thương. Đấy thì chính là cái mà xem là con người dân chịu tác động của các thiên tai như thế nào, từ tính mạng đến tài sản, nhà cửa, rồi lồng bè, diện tích nuôi trồng thủy sản vân vân có bị ảnh hưởng hay không. Và cái cuối cùng thì chúng ta sẽ đánh giá được cái rủi ro. Cái rủi ro đây chính là cái sự kết hợp giữa cái xác suất xảy ra cái thiên tai đấy và cái cường độ của thiên tai và cái mức độ tác động, mức độ nguy hại đến cái con người và đến tính mạng và tài sản của con người. Cái cuối cùng chúng ta đánh giá được là chúng ta phải đánh giá được cái tổng hợp giữa cái xác suất của thiên tai và cái tác động, cái mà nguy hại đối với tính mạng và tài sản. Yes, Zero.
Thank you for your assistance. So this just graphically to illustrate these concepts. Those are the three ideas: hazard, exposure, vulnerability, and where they meet in the middle, we have risk, and where they're all high, then the risk is high. So key ideas. We can have a weather warning. This is a typical weather warning which you get from almost any Met service in the world. Strong winds expected tonight, wind speeds of whatever, some number. If we want to move to an impact-based warning, we might say something like this: strong winds expected tonight, and because of that, the ferry services will be cancelled and the small fishing boats will stay tied up in the harbours. So now we move beyond. We don't give the number because maybe people don't understand what the number, 20 meters per second or whatever, they don't really have any sense of what that means. But they understand that this means there's no ferries or the fishing boats have to stay in the harbour. They understand that. Different types of weather warnings. We have warnings with what we call fixed thresholds, which most of us are very familiar with in Met Service communities. But we can also talk to users and have special warnings for them around about the thresholds which are important for them. And we'll have a look at that. And then we can have some warnings with different variable thresholds. So this is a simple fixed threshold warning for tropical cyclone, the very well-known Saffir-Simpson scale, as we call it, where we say it's a category 1 cyclone, a category 2, category 3, depending on the strength. And the strength is measured typically in the speed of the wind, which is produced in miles per hour or knots or kilometers per hour or meters per second or whatever you want to use. So this is a typical warning with a fixed threshold. But you can have a warning where you have a threshold which you have worked out by discussion with the user. So perhaps with the city authority, they know that their drainage system can only clear so much rainfall every 10 minutes, that it has a certain capacity. And therefore, they know that the levels of rain which can cause the drainage system to become overwhelmed. So the drainage system cannot cope, and then there's flooding on the streets. So you can discuss that with them, and they say, well, actually what we want is a warning of 50 millimeters of rain in a 2-hour period, because we know that if we get that much rain, we will have flooding in the streets. So this is a different kind of warning where you have already discussed with the user, in this case the city authority, about what the level of the warning should be, because they know what it means for them. And then for different thresholds, this is an example from this town of the country of Croatia, where the temperature warnings, and they have a system of temperature warnings, yellow level, orange level, red level for 3 different severity, 3 different levels of severity. But they have different thresholds for different cities because they have a very, very different climate in different parts of their country. And I expect it's also the same in Vietnam, which stretches over a long distance north to south, that you may have different thresholds in the south than you may have in the north. So this is something to consider. Different types of weather warning. This is a typical, again, an old style weather warning, just talks about the hazard. Rainfall between 30 millimeters and 40 millimeters expected tomorrow between this time or that time. Then if we add in the vulnerability, and maybe this is the sort that we've discussed with the city authority, rainfall intensity of so much will possibly lead to overflows in the drainage system. Or this is an example such as Elizabeth has discussed with traffic. If the heavy rain comes at a time which is likely to be very busy on the roads, rush hour, going to work in the morning, coming home from work in the evening, then you think it will slow the traffic down and there'll be big traffic jams and maybe a lot of very long journeys, very slow journeys. So this is again where we've thought about the time and the impact of the weather on what people will be doing at that time. We've added in the vulnerability. And then if we want to go all the way along this route, we could add in the exposure. And here we don't even talk about the weather until the last few words. We say the journey times on the road would be very long because there'll be a lot of disruption, which will happen because of the flooding, which is a result of the heavy rain. So here we've turned everything on its head, and the weather comes last, and the impact on the people and on their activity is the first thing we talk about. So again, I stop here and allow you to discuss that in Vietnamese. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gerald. Thì ở đây thì vừa thì ông có đưa ra một số các cái ví dụ về các cái loại cảnh báo thời tiết khác nhau, thì cái này anh chị em xem cũng hiểu phần lớn rồi đúng không? Đấy, chúng ta cũng biết là chúng ta đang ở mức nào, và cái mà cơ bản nhất mà chúng ta vẫn làm từ xưa đấy là chúng ta chấp nhận các cái ngưỡng mưa, ngưỡng gió. Đấy là cái mà chúng ta vẫn làm. Cái đây thuần túy là ngưỡng khí tượng. Có một cái mức cao hơn một chút, đấy là chúng ta có các ngưỡng mà dựa vào các cái thỏa thuận giữa một cái người dùng, ví dụ như trong trường này đấy là các cái chính quyền địa phương khi mà biết được cái hệ thống thoát nước chẳng hạn, là ví dụ như với Hà Nội cứ 50 mm trong vòng 1 giờ là bắt đầu là có ngập. Đấy, thì mình sẽ đưa thêm cái thông tin đấy vào các bản tin cảnh báo mưa lớn của mình. Và có một cái cao hơn nữa đấy là gì, là có thể là chúng ta có các ngưỡng riêng cho từng thành phố, mỗi một thành phố lại có cái ngưỡng mưa riêng. Đấy cũng là một bước tiến nữa trong cái việc dự báo tác động. Ví dụ cứ Hà Nội một ngưỡng mưa khác, Hà Đông khác, rồi Hà Tĩnh một Đà Nẵng khác, vân vân. Mỗi một tỉnh có một cái ngưỡng mưa khác nhau. Đấy cũng là một cái tiến bộ nữa. Thế nhưng mà với mà cái việc mà ví dụ ông đưa ra một số các cái ví dụ về các cái cảnh báo khác nhau, thì cái thô sơ nhất là chỉ có thời tiết mưa thôi. Cái thứ hai là để nói rằng với cái mưa đấy vào giờ cao điểm thì có thể gây ra tắc đường. Đấy. hoặc là có các cái thông tin khác thêm vào nữa. Đấy là gì? Ví dụ như chúng ta có thể nói thêm đến như cái ví dụ cuối cùng đây là gồm vừa có thông tin về bản thân cái thời tiết nguy hiểm, rồi vừa về các cái tác động khác nhau, và thêm cả cái exposure, tức là thêm cả các cái đối tượng mà có thể chịu tác động nữa. Đấy, tức là ví dụ như này, đối với cả cái trường hợp này thì là mưa lớn có thể gây ra cái tắc đường ở trên cái đường cao tốc gì đó, khiến cho thời gian lưu thông có thể kéo dài thêm 1 giờ chẳng hạn. Đấy, tất cả những cái thông tin này là mục đích cuối cùng, cái mà ảnh dự báo tác động ấy, lớn nhất ấy, là chúng ta sẽ phải có một cái thông tin như thế này. Sẽ rất là khó, đúng không? Không phải đơn giản để chúng ta có thể được. Cái này chính là cái mà chúng ta cần phải có cái sự hợp tác giữa ký lượng thủy văn với các lĩnh vực khác, với các anh chị em phòng thiên tai, và thậm chí là cả các lĩnh vực khác nữa, để chúng ta có được các cái thông điệp như thế này thì mới được gọi là một cái thông tin về tác động, cảnh báo tác động. Thank you, Zero. So I just wonder how long we should have left, because I mean I want to have a like short break.
I was just thinking that myself, that I was going to look to Sam for guidance, because I'm about halfway through my presentation, but this is possibly a good time for me and for you to take 10 or 15 minutes if Sam is agreeable, because I understand it's important to have a short break to take a little break from the concentration. Sam?
Actually, I was wondering about the same thing. So I think we all agree. I think we can break here and get back at
I think 15 minutes. Yes.
Yeah.
15 minutes. Good.
15
Good.
minutes. That would
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
grab
sir.
a coffee.
Yeah, we'll be back in 15 minutes.
Okay, enjoy your coffee.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Hello.
Hi Sam. Hi Gerald. Yeah, we can start. Yeah, we can start again. Yes.
I'm ready and waiting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, colleagues, and hope you're refreshed a little bit after that. So I'll continue with this little discussion about these concepts of hazards and vulnerability. So get this moving. Yep. This is the diagram you will find in the publication 1150, and it tries to represent in a diagrammatic form some of these ideas. So at the top left, you have the things in green. These are things which we're very familiar with in Met Service communities, scientific communities. So these are the things we work with all the time: weather and climate and geophysical hazards. Then we go to those other pieces which we're trying to, in the end, talk about the impacts, quantify the impacts, understand it, and reduce it. But in between, we have these other ideas of exposure and vulnerability, these things which really we don't know much about in the Met Service community because they have to do with other like social science and geography and understanding of society and communities in a different way. So we also have to realize that, and these areas are these parts which are colored in deep red here, there is a lot of uncertainty about these links between hazards and impacts. We need to understand those better. When I say there's uncertainty, I really mean an uncertainty in our knowledge rather than a scientific uncertainty. We need to work harder to understand better what the links are between the hazards on the one hand and the impacts on the other. And that's a task for us. And that's a task we can only achieve through communicating and listening in particular to colleagues in emergency management, in local authorities, and in the different user groups whom we deal with. Now, Elizabeth had talked about the weather warning risk matrix, and we've always, when we deal with weather warnings, talked about how severe something might be. So the winds will be this level, or the temperature will be up to that, or the rainfall will be so much. So we talk about how bad things will be. But we also need to incorporate this idea of uncertainty. The uncertainty, some of it comes from nature because there are things we can never know about the atmosphere. Some of it comes from just our own lack of knowledge, really. So this is the matrix which she has also talked about, where we have impacts along one axis, going from very low to medium to high, and we have likelihood on the other axis, we call the y-axis, if you wish, very low to medium to high. So this gives us a two-dimensional space in which we can think about how bad some upcoming event might be. And if it's in the green area, it's one of those which is really minor, that either society can easily accept this risk and deal with it, or the hazard itself will be of low severity. Then if we go to the yellow, it's something we need to be aware of. Maybe not everybody will be affected, but certainly we need to make sure we don't do anything to increase our risk, like maybe traveling at a time of heavy rain or something. Then we go to orange, then we must be prepared. Something is going to happen which we need to prepare for. And red, the most severe level, is we have to take action. We have to do something, perhaps evacuate our homes, perhaps put up sandbags, but there is action is going to be needed. The Met Office in the United Kingdom were the first to develop this approach. Actually, the colour scheme came from France, from Météo France, and it came about after a series of very severe storms just over 20 years ago, in the very last years of the 20th century. They had some quite severe storms, a lot of damage, a lot of impact on society, and they developed what they call the vigilance system, which used for the first time this color coding for weather warnings. And that has become quite common now for Met services around the world to use color coding, usually a 4-level, green, yellow, orange, red, but sometimes a 5-level, sometimes more. And here we expand it into 2 dimensions. So why should we use this? Well, now we can talk at an earlier stage, because when we issue weather warnings to the public, we need to be very sure that what is going to happen will happen, because otherwise the public, if they get too many warnings and things don't happen so that they're not so severe, they will lose trust in us. So the public need to trust us. So we can really only issue warnings to the public when we're fairly sure that something is going to happen. But we might know some days in advance that there's a risk, but it's not such a high risk. But that might still be important for emergency managers or for people who, in local authorities, people who need to take some actions to protect against the possible damage. So we can use this now to give an earlier expression of impact, well below the time of impact, maybe 6-7 days before. And from day to day, we can show how the risk changes depending on the exposure or the vulnerability or the likelihood changing. So there's a path that we can take with the risk. So perhaps we see a tropical cyclone or something, we're not so sure whether it will impact our country, but we know that if it does impact, it will have a high risk. So at first, maybe 7 days, 6 days in advance, it might have a high risk, but the likelihood is quite low. And then a day or 2 later, it seems a little bit more likely, but maybe it's not so severe now. And we move up to the next box. And then coming within maybe 3 days, actually it's looking quite likely now, but again, the impact is not so high. And then it changes direction, and maybe towards the end, within 24 hours or 48 hours, we're in the very top box of high impact and high likelihood. So the path that the path of risk that we can plot on this chart can move from day to day. And in the early part of it, that path, we might be talking to the emergency management people about this low risk, but they might say, even if it's a low risk, I need to take some action, get some key personnel into position, get some key resources into position. And even if it doesn't happen, that's a low cost thing that I can do. And then as we go closer, we plot the risk. So maybe just go on to the next slide. The benefits, it can allow us to plan in a better way for different scenarios. Maybe plan further in advance with the professionals in emergency management. We can look at the best case, the worst case, the most likely outcomes. We can look at different possibilities. We can give some information about the confidence that there is in the forecast. So that's a more informed risk assessment. We can hopefully have more information to facilitate better social benefits and have a more coordinated approach to disaster response and preparedness. So preparedness is an important word here. It's not responding when the disaster has happened, but responding in advance to take actions which will reduce the impact, which is very much, of course, in line with the Sendai framework, how we look at weather hazards and other hazards now. It's through preparing well and being ready and making society resilient, rather than going in after the event and helping people to mop up and so on. So I'll stop here and allow you to discuss that in Vietnamese. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you Zero. Thì cái phần này thì ông ấy có nói về cái văn bản 1150 của WMO ấy. Đấy thì nó liên quan đến việc là các cái cấp cảnh báo hiện nay theo hướng dẫn của WMO thì có thể là có 40 cấp. Trong đấy là có cái cấp thấp nhất là cấp màu xanh là gần như là không có tác động gì. Còn cái cấp từ màu vàng trở lên là ta bắt đầu có các cái hành động khác nhau. Đấy thì để mà xác định được các cái cấp cấp thì tùy mỗi nước, ví dụ như của Anh này thì họ dựa vào các màu này và họ đưa ra luôn các cái thông tin, ví dụ như là màu vàng là chuẩn bị, màu da cam là sẵn sàng, màu đỏ là phải hành động. Đấy, thế thì để xác định là trong cái bảng ma trận này thì sẽ phải dựa vào cái xác suất dự báo, cái độ tin cậy dự báo và cái tác động. Còn một trong những cái điểm yếu của các cái dự báo thời tiết từ trước đến nay đấy là gì, chúng ta thường tập trung quá nhiều vào cái cường độ của thiên tai, cái severity, cái mức độ nguy hiểm, mức độ mạnh yếu của thiên tai. Đấy, và bây giờ thì chúng ta bắt đầu là phải tính thêm đến cái uncertainty, như là cái sai số. Đấy, thì khi mà đưa vào cái bảng ma trận này chúng ta sẽ tính được cả hai cái đấy, cả cái cường độ, tức là chính là cái tác động, và cái xác suất, chính là cái độ tin cậy. Thì ở đây thì đối với cả cái hướng dẫn WMO thì thường là sẽ có 4 cấp. Đấy, và cái lý do để chúng ta đưa ra ở đây là gì, là khi mà dùng cái bảng này thì chúng ta sẽ có thể đánh giá được cái thứ nhất là có sớm đưa ra được các nhận định về cái khả năng tác động. Ví dụ như Zero, can you come back to the pathway of the risk matrix? Can you come back to the slide with the pathway?
Pathway.
Yeah.
This
yes.
one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Đấy, thì ở đây thì ví dụ với cái bảng này thì chúng ta sẽ xác định mỗi một ngày nó sẽ có một cái vị trí khác nhau trong cái bảng này, và mỗi một vị trí đấy nó có một ý nghĩa khác nhau. Ví dụ như cái ngày 5-6 ngày trước khi thiên tai xảy ra thì chúng ta sẽ có cái box đầu tiên, box vàng ở phía dưới. Thì tại ngày đấy thì chúng ta sẽ có là tác động sẽ rất lớn, nhưng mà cái độ tin cậy thì lại rất thấp. Tức là chúng ta dự báo xa, ví dụ một cơn siêu bão chẳng hạn vào thì cái tác động rất lớn, nhưng mà lúc này chúng ta chưa tin cậy lắm, thì chúng ta có thể đánh cái dấu tích vào cái hàng dưới cùng bên tay phải. Một ngày sau thì chúng ta thấy rằng là nhận định là cái tác động của nó lại không được mạnh lắm. Đấy, nhưng mà lúc này thì cái xác suất mà xảy ra cái bão đấy chẳng hạn, hay cái mưa lớn đấy là lớn hơn. Tương tự ngày sau đấy thì là chúng ta tăng cái mức độ cảnh báo lên, tăng cái xác suất xuất hiện lên, nhưng mà cái tác động của nó vẫn ở cái mức là medium. Và đến cái khoảng 2 hoặc 3 ngày trước khi thiên tai xảy ra thì chúng ta sẽ ở cái box cao nhất kia là gì, là cái dự báo về một cái thiên tai mà xảy ra có tác động rất lớn và xác suất xảy ra là rất cao. Đấy, thì với cái bảng ma trận này chúng ta sẽ có thể có các cái cách để communicate, để truyền các thông điệp khác nhau. Ví dụ như ngày dưới cùng này chúng ta chỉ thông báo cho các cấp lãnh đạo thôi. 5-6 ngày trước chúng ta không đưa ra công chúng vội, không mấy vội, đưa vào cấp lãnh đạo để chúng ta nói trước được rằng là gì, là cái xác suất, cái khả năng có thể xảy ra một cái thiên tai lớn như thế. Đấy, thì cũng giống như chúng ta đang làm, thì nó có một cái công văn trước, đúng không? Thế thì một cái ưu điểm nữa thì những cái ngày sau thì chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu là tùy các cái kịch bản nó sẽ có ứng phó khác nhau. Một cái phần nữa là về cái phần benefit. So can you move to the benefit slide please? Về các cái lợi ích thì ở đây thì có mấy cái lợi ích mà khi chúng ta nếu mà dùng cái bảng này để chúng ta đánh giá, thì thứ nhất là chúng ta sẽ có được các cái kế hoạch cho các cái kịch bản khác nhau tốt hơn. Bởi vì là trong cái bảng này chúng ta có đưa thêm được cả cái thông tin về vừa là cường độ và lại là vừa là các xác suất xảy ra. Cái mà trong bảng thì chúng ta hiện nay chưa nói được. Đấy, tức là gì, là các kịch bản khác nhau. Đấy, rồi thì chúng ta có thêm các cái kế hoạch ứng phó khác nhau, có thể cho trường hợp tốt nhất này, tệ nhất này, xấu nhất, rồi trường hợp mà xác suất xảy ra nhiều nhất, vân vân. Rồi chúng ta cũng có luôn cái thông tin về cái độ tin cậy, nó chính là cái trục Y của chúng ta. Và với cái thông tin này chúng ta cũng có thể là truyền đạt đến cái nhiều đối tượng hơn. Và ở đây thì chúng ta có thể có thêm một cái phần nữa là về các cái quá trình để chúng ta có thể xác định và chuẩn bị cho các cái kế hoạch ứng phó. Bằng cách là gì, chúng ta vẫn có thể đưa ra các cái cảnh báo sớm, nhưng mà lúc này thì các cái độ tin cậy nó không cao, nó thấp, và theo thời gian chúng ta sẽ điều chỉnh dần. Thế thì cái phần này anh chị có câu hỏi về cái này không? So I just have a quick question.
Yes, please.
So whether because we can change the position of the box in the impact matrix day by day, So is it make any confusion to the government, local government, or public if we change our forecast every day?
Yeah, this is an excellent.
Yeah, and how should we avoid that?
Yeah, this is an excellent question, and it comes to one of the challenges of this approach, because we in the Met Service business know that when we sit in the forecast office and we look at the possibilities of what might happen, we know that from one day to the next, the forecast will not be the same. It will change, it will develop as we get closer to the time of an event. We know more about it, we perhaps have better observations, the models are doing a better job. So this is really about trying to share that complexity of information with our partners. It's a real problem sharing information with the public, which is too complex, because it can make them very confused, of course. But I think with emergency management partners who are professionals, I think they should be able to understand, but we have to help them by working with them. We have to explain what we are capable of, really. We have to manage the expectation so that they understand that 5 or 6 days in advance, our knowledge is uncertain. But as we get closer to the time, our knowledge will become more certain. And therefore, the overall assessment of risk will change from one day to the next. It's not the same 7 days ahead as it is 1 day ahead of an event. And that's a limitation in our science that we will never overcome. We will never have perfect weather forecasts 7 or 8 days ahead. So we have to live with that, but also help our partners understand that and work together to still make the best use of the information that we have. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much for your very excellent answer. Ở đây thì ông nói rằng là đây chính là một cái thách thức khi mà chúng ta triển khai cái dự báo tác động này. Tuy nhiên thì chúng ta cũng phải nói, đặc biệt là với cả các anh bên phòng thiên tai, thì với cái thông tin này thì ông nói rằng là chúng ta không nên đưa ra công chúng. Đấy, bởi vì nó quá là khoa học, nó quá là phức tạp, nó sẽ thay đổi hàng ngày. Nhưng mà chúng ta với trong nội bộ về lĩnh vực phòng thiên tai thì chúng ta phải hiểu là cái dự báo chúng ta là sẽ thay đổi theo thời gian, và các cái ví dụ như là thời gian ảnh hưởng của bão, khu vực ảnh hưởng của bão nó cũng sẽ thay đổi hàng ngày. Chúng ta không thể có một cái dự báo chính xác từ 5-6 ngày trước mà 5-6 ngày sau không thay đổi gì cả. Cũng chính vì thế cho nên là chúng ta sẽ phải thường xuyên liên hệ với cả các anh bên phòng thiên tai và các đối tượng sử dụng các thông tin này, đặc biệt là với các thông tin như trong cái bảng này thì chúng ta không nên tức là chúng ta chỉ truyền đạt cho những người thực sự là chuyên nghiệp thôi, chúng ta không nên đưa ra ngoài công chúng. Và ở đây thì là chúng ta cũng qua cái bảng này thì chúng ta cũng phải đặt vấn đề là gì, là các cái dự báo của chúng ta 5-6 ngày trước thì nó chỉ ở một mức độ tin cậy nhất định, nhưng mà càng về gần, càng về sau thì các cái dự báo sẽ càng có độ tin cậy cao hơn. Và cũng chính vì thế nên là gì, là một lần nữa ông cũng nhấn mạnh là cái hợp tác giữa phòng thiên tai và khí tượng thủy văn phải rất là chặt chẽ để làm sao để gọi là sử dụng tốt nhất các thông tin có tại từng thời điểm. Ví dụ như 5-6 ngày trước thì cái thông tin gì là quý giá nhất, là có ví dụ như cái bảng vừa rồi là sẽ là một cái trận bão rất lớn. Đấy, nhưng mà lúc đấy thì chúng ta còn rất là độ tin cậy rất là thấp. Vài ngày sau chúng ta bắt đầu thay đổi dần các cái dự báo và các cái thông tin nó sẽ có độ tin cậy cao hơn, cho đến cái hàng trên cùng là lúc mà có thể trước 1-2 ngày trước cái thiên tai đấy là chúng ta có cái độ tin cậy cao nhất. Đấy, tương ứng như thế chúng ta sẽ có cái việc mà sử dụng các thông tin được hữu ích nhất. Để các anh chị xem có câu hỏi gì không ạ?
I have one question. According to your Magic Rich, I want to know why you divide to 4 levels, because in Vietnam we have 5 levels with disaster risk. And one more question is which that's the value step between each level, how we can estimate?
They're excellent questions, and thank you. If you have 5 levels in Vietnam, and that is best for your situation, then that's fine, that's good. You have to decide in your country how many levels are best, because I cannot tell you from my country and my climate what should be proper for your country and your climate and your organization of disaster management and so on. It will change from one country to the other. In Europe, mostly we use 4 levels, but in Germany it's 5 levels. So there is no reason why it should be 4 levels or 5 levels that is universal. You have to pick what's best for your own country. And the second question you asked was, can you just repeat that? Oh, about the level, about the thresholds. Yes, of course. Sorry. That's also very good. Normally, when we look at the thresholds between the different levels, the green and the orange and the red, first thing we do is we look at climatology. So we say, is this something that happens once every year, once every 3 years, once every 5 years, once every 10 years, typically? Of course, now with climate change, we have to put in a factor for that also. But we also then think from the other end, from the impact end. What is the impact of this event? How severe, perhaps, can it be? If a coastal community is very exposed to strong winds and heavy rain from a tropical cyclone, the impact will be higher there, perhaps, than another community living many kilometers away from the coast, maybe on higher ground where flooding is not such a problem. So the thresholds can be different for different regions. If you want to do that, it makes it a little bit more complicated, but in a large country such as Vietnam, I think that's probably something you will need to think about. I come from a small country, so it's not the same for me. So I think you start with climatology and you think about what the likelihood and the severity. You look back at history, what events gave really severe impacts, caused many deaths or caused a lot of economic damage, and between them, and you should work with emergency management community to help to set these thresholds between green and yellow, yellow and orange, orange and red, or whatever number of levels you have in your national system. I think that's something which needs discussion at a national level. A lot of this is about opening up discussions at national level with other professionals whom you work with, and having those discussions and conversations, and eventually having agreements, MOUs or whatever, which put these into codify them. Thank you.
Không có. Tức là ông ấy cũng nói rằng là cái việc mà 4 cấp hay 5 cấp là do quốc gia thôi, tùy mỗi quốc gia, như Việt Nam mình đang chọn là 5. Châu Âu thì đa số là 4, trong đến Đức thì cũng là 5 cấp. Thế thì cái này thì là dựa một phần vào cái xác suất xảy ra rớt lặp lại của cái hiện tượng, có thể là 1 trên 10 năm, 1 trên 50 năm hay 1 trên 100 năm xảy ra một lần, vân vân. Thì các cái đối tượng chữa động có thể là thậm chí là nếu mà mình làm chi tiết có thể là cái cấp độ khác nhau cho từng vùng tỉnh, tuy nhiên thì nó sẽ phức tạp hơn. Năng có hỏi luôn cái câu mà làm sao so
có cấp hỏi cái ví dụ như đối với cái trường hợp mà tác động từ cấp thì nó như thế nào và đưa vào ma trận này.
Cái hôm sau rồi mà có riêng một bài về tác động sơ cấp từ cấp có bài sau và một bài riêng để
bác học có vì đáng
Yeah, he has a question about the secondary impact, but I said that we will have separate lectures on the secondary impact, so it will be later.
Indeed, yes, I have. At the end of this, we can go on to discuss that, or we can discuss it another day if we run out of time. But it's a very important point: secondary impacts and even tertiary impacts, because no impact lies alone. There are always other impacts that follow on for society. So perhaps I should continue with this presentation now. Thank you. So, yes, well, we've said this many times already. Partnerships are really, really very important. Met Services cannot do this by themselves. This is an example from UK, from Great Britain, where there is a partnership of many, many organisations to help to advise government. So you see the Met Office there, which is for the meteorology, but you also see UK Space for Space Agency, Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, Public Health, many scientific and technical agencies, but also then you have the Cabinet Office from English government, Scottish government, Welsh government are there somewhere. So this brings together the technical experts, scientific experts, professionals, with the administrators at a very high level in government to discuss the various risks to society from meteorology, from hydrology, even from space weather, and to put in place policies which minimize those risks. So this is just an example of another country where they have taken this to quite an advanced level. Who can support impact-based forecasting? That's a question you have to ask. Which are the government bodies in Vietnam? So you have emergency management. I'm not familiar with the situation in Vietnam, whether that's emergency management is organized on a national basis, on a regional basis, on a local basis. This is something you have to work with. Whatever the structure is there, you have to work with it. And you have to develop, and I think this was mentioned after Elizabeth's talk, some sort of government mechanism, some sort of oversight between the different groups, the Met Services and the emergency management, the local authority, whoever, steering committee and advisory groups, technical groups and policy groups, have some program management, develop a good communication strategy so everybody understands what their role is in this process. So the Met Service know exactly what they should do, the emergency management know exactly what they should do, and there's good and easy discussion and communication between the different individuals and the different organizations. This is really vital, that there is good and easy communication, that you can pick up the phone and talk to your colleague in the other organization in a very relaxed way, where you understand their issues, they understand your issues, and you have that really good and positive collaboration. You have to agree on how best to provide good, reliable services, good quality management, and think about whether, particularly, again, many countries as Vietnam, bordering on other countries, the weather recognizes no borders, no political borders, so you may need to cooperate with the authorities in your neighboring countries to have a good and seamless cross-border approach dealing with emergency management, dealing with hazards that affect people on both sides of the political borders. So within Met Services, we have to ask, what are the competencies and skills that we need to add? In Met Services, we all come from a science background. We study mathematics and physics and atmospheric science and so on. So we need to add more competencies in communication, in listening. We need to train with users, as you are doing here this week, cross-training, so you all train together, so you understand their issues and they understand your problems. Educate them, we talked about that, on how to use the forecast, how to understand the limitations. There may be special users like transport authorities, electricity companies, companies providing communication services, internet, city authorities, port authorities, fishermen's groups, agriculture, of course. The media are always important because they're a very, very powerful tool for you to reach the people with the communicating your message, and then ultimately the public who you need to reach. These are critical. So maybe you could talk a little bit about those ideas now in Vietnamese and that importance of having partnerships and how to formalize them with MOUs, but also how they have to have a strong informal part to encourage good communication and easy communication between individuals and between organizations. So I'll stop here for a moment.
Yes, thank you. Ở đây thì ông ấy nói về cái một trong những điều mà quan trọng nhất để mà thực hiện cái dự báo tác động đấy là cái partnership, tức là cái hợp tác. Cái này gần như là bắt buộc. Cái này đặc biệt là như ở trung tâm đây là có phòng vấn cái công việc này. Tức là gì, là chúng ta phải có các cái mối liên hệ với các đơn vị khác, của các bộ ngành khác, các cái đơn vị phòng thiên tai của các bộ ngành khác, để bất cứ khi nào chúng ta có thể gọi nhấc máy lên, gọi điện, có được đầu mối bên đấy, để có thể hỏi thông tin và có thể trao đổi rất là thân thiện, rất là gần như công việc hàng ngày. Đấy là cái mà có lẽ là với những chỗ khí tượng ban phòng thiên tai thì làm tương đối tốt, nhưng các bộ ngành khác là chúng ta là còn tương đối là hạn chế. Rồi ở đây thì cũng cần phải đặt vấn đề là khi mà thực hiện cái này thì chúng ta cần phải có những cái gì. Nhất là chúng ta phải có được các cái gọi là các cái kế hoạch về trao đổi thông tin, kết nối thông tin với các bộ ngành khác, các bộ ban ngành khác. Rồi thì chúng ta phải có các cái giáo dục, các người nói gọi là các cái hội thảo giống như ngày hôm nay, là giữa các đơn vị trong khối phòng chống thiên tai với nhau để hiểu nhau hơn và có đầu mối để có thể trao đổi. Rồi thì chúng ta có thể tập huấn về các cái thiên tai, về các cái kế hoạch phòng thiên tai, cũng như về các cái đối tượng chịu rủi ro khác như là giao thông vận tải hay là nông nghiệp vân vân. Rồi quan hệ và tập huấn đối tượng về media, truyền thông, rồi ngư dân, rồi người dân thông thường. Đấy là những cái mà chúng ta sẽ phải làm để các cái thông tin về tác động về khí tượng thủy văn chúng ta gần gũi hơn. Đấy, thì tóm lại trong phần này đối với ông ấy là cái quan trọng nhất đối với cả để mà phát triển được cái hệ thống cảnh báo rủi ro này, cảnh báo rủi ro và tác động này, thì là cần phải có một cái hợp tác đa ngành, giống như cái hình ban đầu ông chỉ ra của UK ấy, thì nó rất nhiều các ngành khác nhau trong cái vòng tròn đấy. Đấy, thì chúng ta cũng phải tiến đến một cái như thế để có thể có được một cái hệ thống mà để cảnh báo tác động nó thực sự là hiệu quả. Yes, thank you, Zero. You can.
Thank you. So I just want to go on now and talk a little bit about something which happened almost 1 year ago in December in UK. Actually, we held a symposium on impact-based forecast and warning services, and we had representatives there from many countries. And the reason we held this was we wanted to get experience from countries who have already started to implement this approach. So we had many countries coming and giving us the benefit of their experience. And there is on the WMO website, and this is also in the PowerPoint which you have, you can go to links to the presentations. They're short presentations. We deliberately ask people to keep it to 2 or 3 slides for each presentation from each country, just to summarize what worked, and actually more importantly, what did not work in their efforts to move towards impact-based forecast and warning services. And as a result of this symposium, we have been working on updating this guidelines, WMO 1150, the guidelines on multi-hazard impact-based forecast and warning services. We have been working over the last year in updating that and adding new chapters. That work is in its final stages at the moment. So that will be a second edition, and we'll add new chapters to it. We'll add a chapter on partnerships. We've discussed how important that is. On good communication, on how that's a really important enabler and facilitator for impact-based forecasting. On the particular difficulties with risk communication, and this goes back to the discussion we had about the path of risk through the matrix, how the risk changes and how to communicate that effectively without confusing people. Impacts and methodologies, how we collect information about impacts, because the information can come in different forms. It can be on Twitter feeds or in photographs or on newspapers, accounts, reports, many different forms. The value, because we need to convince our governments that this is a valuable approach, because it will take resources to implement it. And finally, training. So there's 6 new chapters are being added to the publication, and this, I think, will help to, pardon me, to improve it. Partnerships. We asked people to give us some ideas on some of these key thoughts, and here are some that came in partnerships. Some thoughts from people who were at the symposium about collaboration, about inclusivity, about sharing information. One of the challenges we have in Met Services is we tend to want to sell our data, and that means people find it difficult to access our data, and that's not so good in the broader sense. Governments generally think that we should sell our data to raise income, but actually in the longer term there is more value in the data if we make it available for free and if we make it easy for people to work with it. So these are ideas in partnerships. In communication, we had these ideas: good translators between Met Services and the public, sharing experience, listening to users. Listening is really, really important. And somebody said caring. We need to care for our public. We need to make sure that our science is not just science for the sake of science, but also it's implemented in a way that protects our citizens. Then risk communication, cultural changes on what the weather will do, ensuring that decision makers have the information they need. Somebody said it's the so what of weather. Well, so what if there's going to be a cyclone? Well, actually, it might mean that you have 2 meters of water in your home tomorrow. Then that's the so what. Communication and training. Impacts and methodologies, how to collect this information, databases, understanding vulnerabilities, looking for innovative solutions to collecting the data of impacts and putting it side by side with the data about what actually the weather was. And the value. The people who could potentially benefit need to believe that. They need to trust that this is good information that they can use to help save their lives or livelihoods, or to make good decisions about protecting themselves. And overall, that's really something that's in the national interest. And then training, teaching meteorologists how to move from weather forecasting into impact-based forecasting. The training that you're doing this week with other agencies, and educating forecasters and users. So again, I'll just stop here for a moment and let you discuss that in Vietnamese, because there's some interesting ideas there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Đấy thì ông ấy có nói đến cái hướng dẫn, cái guideline mà phiên bản 2. Đây thì chính là cái sản phẩm cập nhật sau cái symposium về IBF hồi tháng 12 năm 2019. Tức là phiên bản 2 là vừa mới cập nhật năm 2020. Thì trong đó nó có 6 cái chương mới và nó có rất nhiều các cái nội dung mà rút ra từ cái kinh nghiệm thực tế của các nước đã và đang triển khai cái dự báo tác động. Thì ở trong đấy nó có rất nhiều các cái ý mà như ông ấy vừa liệt kê ấy. Thì với rất nhiều ý trong đấy thì cái phần khí tượng thủy văn đáng lưu ý ở đây là phải thứ nhất là communicate thường xuyên với cả các cái đối tượng khác nhau, các sở ban ngành khác nhau và với người dân, rồi với media vân vân. Và cái thứ hai nữa là phải lắng nghe các cái ý kiến từ phản hồi. Rồi thì sau đấy là phải có các cái chiến lược để truyền thông, rồi thì các cái câu từ, bởi vì là những người mà gọi là cái disaster management responder ấy, là người ta cần các thông tin thật sự hữu ích để có thể ra được cái quyết định đúng đắn để có thể giảm thiểu cái rủi ro cho thiên tai. Thì đấy chính là các cái phần mà có lẽ là chúng ta sẽ tìm cái đường link đến cái tài liệu để nó làm thêm. Trong 6 cái chương mới thì nó đúc kết chủ yếu là qua các kinh nghiệm thực tế mà các nước đã triển khai cái tài liệu trước đấy, một bao nhiêu đấy, sinh hoạt 150. Nó có một cái guideline nữa. Đấy, thì tức là cái phiên bản 2 là phiên bản cập nhật năm 2020, thì trong đó nó có nhiều các cái thông tin mới. Đấy thì có lẽ tôi sẽ tìm link và gửi cho lớp để các bạn đọc cái phần này. Yes, thank you, Zero. Yeah, you can continue.
Thank you. Just my last few slides then. We in WMO also want to learn from you. We want to learn what your experience is as you move towards impact-based forecasting. We want to know what worked for you, what worked well, and why did it work well? What was the context? And actually, more importantly, almost, we want to know what did not work, because often we learn more from things that failed than things that succeeded. So examples of best practice are good. Examples of failure are good, because then we know that this did not work, and we try to avoid that approach. What lessons we learned from that. What are good management structures for impact-based forecasts. This is new for us all, and we all have to learn from each other. And what are the resources needed for implementing impact-based forecast projects in a successful way? And how do we change the working culture of a Met service? In every organization, there is a working culture, and it is defined by the work we do and the training we have. And in Met services, we were trained as scientists. We work as an operational service. And, you know, Met services, people who work in them are almost the same everywhere you go in the world, because we have this very common background. But all of us need to move and change our working culture to think more about the users that we have. And we need to consider technical solutions, how we merge data from many different sources, data which is not traditional weather data, but data about impacts. What are the common factors between success and common factors behind failure? And how can WMO support our resource projects in this area? How will we need to train our future meteorologists? Do we need to add more topics to the training in the regional training centres, so that the meteorologists of the future already learn about impact-based forecasting when they do their basic training, and can adapt to this approach very comfortably when they sit at the forecast desk? And what are the training needs of the users? Because users also need to be trained. Users need to understand something of the world of meteorology if they are to get the best benefit from this. So ultimately, if we think of a pyramid, at the bottom we have data, we have lots of data in meteorology. Then we organize that data to give information by putting it on weather charts or maps or having time series. We structure it in a way. From that, we move to knowledge, and this is what we normally have. We have knowledge of what weather systems will do, and we try and communicate that knowledge with users. But we want to move to the very top here, wisdom, where we understand what the likely impact of the weather events of which we have knowledge. We have the knowledge, but now we want to move to the next level, the integration of the weather information with the societal information, and leading on to the actions that we should take to make sure that our citizens are safe. That's the end of my presentation. I'll just let you discuss those last few slides in Vietnamese. Thank you.
So for those questions from WMO, so we mean we should have kind of the answer after we have kind of the demonstration.
Yes, that is correct. When we are interested, as you progress towards developing impact-based forecasting, what you find to be successful and what you find not to be successful, because those are lessons we can bring forward to other countries, we hope.
And do we need to answer some of them after this workshop?
Oh, no. I think this is much later, much later after you have had some experience. We don't say that this is something we expect from you now, but we just say that longer term, we hope that your experience will help many other countries because your experience will be very valuable.
Yes, I got it. Yeah. Thế thì ông có cái phần cuối này, phần cuối ông trao đổi về các cái chia sẻ kinh nghiệm từ các cái quốc gia mà đã thực hiện cái IBF này, thì chính là qua một loạt các câu hỏi mà ông vừa liệt kê như vừa rồi, ví dụ như là các cái kinh nghiệm thành công rồi không thành công, các cái thay đổi về cấu trúc quản lý này, rồi thì các cái nguồn lực đã được huy động cho cái việc xây dựng cái hệ thống dự báo tác động như thế nào, rồi thì cái văn hóa làm việc trong cái cơ quan khí tượng đã thay đổi như thế nào từ trước và sau khi có cái IBF, rồi các cái technical cái giải pháp kỹ thuật để mà tích hợp tất cả các loại số liệu khác nhau trong các cơ quan khí tượng là như thế nào, rồi WMO có thể hỗ trợ những gì, chúng ta có cần thay đổi cách đào tạo các gọi là nhà khí tượng, các dự báo viên trong tương lai hay không, bởi vì là từ trước đến giờ thì khí tượng thuần túy là đào tạo về các cái chỉ số chuyên môn chứ còn chưa có cái đào tạo về dự báo tác động, rồi có các loại tác động là các cái loại đào tạo gì chúng ta cần thêm nữa để có thể có được cái nguồn dự báo viên có thể có khả năng dự báo cái tác động này. Và cuối cùng là cái hình tam giác này thì là chúng ta đi ở các cái mức độ khác nhau, từ mức độ rất là sơ khai như là các cái loại số liệu thuần túy là các loại số liệu, sau đó chúng ta trích xuất ra các cái loại thông tin như là chuỗi thời gian, như là bản đồ nguy cơ, vân vân, và đến một bước tiếp theo là chúng ta sẽ kết hợp các cái này lại phân tích và tạo thành một cái tri thức, và cái cuối cùng là cái cao nhất là chúng ta sẽ hiểu, nắm bắt được và tích hợp được tất cả các cái loại thông tin số liệu, rồi tất cả các cái kiến thức từ các cái chuyên gia về các lĩnh vực khác nhau, không chỉ khí tượng thủy văn mà phòng chống thiên tai, rồi giao thông vận tải, vân vân, để chúng ta có được các cái thông tin về dự báo tác động thực sự là hữu ích. Thì đấy là chính là cái mà WMO mong muốn, mà nếu mà Việt Nam mà nếu mà hệ thống dự báo tác động thì chúng ta cũng sẽ phải trả lời các câu hỏi đấy. Chúng ta sẽ đã thay đổi từng bước như nào, đã làm từng bước ra làm sao. Đấy là cái mà chúng ta sẽ cùng với ngày hôm nay chúng ta chưa có thực sự được cái dự báo tác động nó không rõ ràng, thì các anh chị có thể cùng cảm nhận xem là ví dụ như cái tính từ ngày hôm nay hay năm nay chẳng hạn, sau khoảng 4-5 năm nữa nếu chúng ta có cái sự thay đổi thì chúng ta sẽ cảm nhận được cái sự thay đổi nó như thế nào giữa một cái hệ thống đang dự báo như hiện nay, dự báo khí tượng thời tiết thuần túy, và sau này sẽ là cái hệ thống dự báo tác động thì nó sẽ khác nhau như thế nào. Đấy là cái mà chúng ta sẽ trả lời câu hỏi cái này sau khi mà chúng ta đã có được một cái hệ thống dự báo tác động. Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. Now I just look to Sam here now. I see we just have a few minutes left in this session. I have one slide, or it's not really a slide, it's an image on primary, secondary and tertiary effects. I don't know whether you want me to introduce it now very briefly, so it can be discussed then tomorrow morning in the self-guided session, Sam, or do you want me to leave that for another time?
Thank you, Gerard. Before even answering your question, I just want to say how excellent I think you've done with this presentation. It's got a lot of points in it, very, very useful, and in some way even lays an introduction to the very last lecture that we'll be having on Friday, which is to develop a work plan. So that there are some slides that are going there very well. Luckily, that's against your name, Gerald Fleming, Friday. So that makes me very happy. Yeah, concerning this other part, really, I think this is Lam. Lam, do you think that we should continue for a few more minutes, or? But before you answer, I'd like to tell you that tomorrow we have some space in the program where we have some 30 minutes that are marked without any title of anything. so maybe there is time there. But really, I want to leave it to you. Would the team want to continue for a few more minutes, or would you rather leave it for tomorrow? Another thing I would like to say also is for tomorrow morning, regarding these primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts, there is some. Is that a car?
Sorry.
Sorry. There is a link that has been provided, some material that have been provided, and there's a link from the program for the self-guided session. So maybe you might want to look at it first, and then Gerald can talk about it later. Or really, let me leave this to now.
Yes, so as far as I see in the website now, we don't have the link for the primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts. So if possible, Zero, can you upload the PowerPoint to that?
Let me explain. Maybe if you look at Tuesday, the second item.
Is that the video?
Oh, no, wait a minute. Did I get it? Yeah, it is the one, yeah. Link? No, it is for good examples of primary, secondary, and tertiary impacts. Please see page 10 of Learn from Multi-Hazard Early Warning Systems to Respond to Pandemics. That is 15 minutes, and there's a link. Gerald, will that do? That's for tomorrow morning.
Oh. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yes,
So
I got the link.
So what I was saying is you could have a look at that tomorrow, yes, and then Gerald can talk about it later in the afternoon, or he can do it now. Well, I can see you have pulled it up.
I appreciate it. It's late in the evening, so I think probably the best thing is to discuss this tomorrow. As you say, if you discuss it among yourselves, just the concept to briefly. I mean, we have so many examples of it lately with our virus problem, our COVID problem. You know, the hazard is the coronavirus. The primary hazard is that people get sick. Then the secondary hazard is that we have to lock down society, and a tertiary hazard is people lose their jobs because there's no more work in tourism or in the airports or whatever. This is the way we have to think, that if it's a cyclone hits, that's the primary. The primary hazard might be heavy rain, then the next secondary hazard might be flooding, and the tertiary hazard would be that somebody is out of their house and must leave their house and find a new place to live for 3 months or 4 months while their house is cleaned and rebuilt, the damage is fixed, and so on. It's these concepts of thinking through the impacts from the initial hazard right through to the impacts on society and how they develop, which are going to be different from one society to the other. So that's really just to introduce you to the concept. And I think maybe, as you say, this page is in that link, or that page 10 from that paper. Something to start the discussion, and we can discuss it in more detail tomorrow afternoon. Sam.
Okay, so I think that's a good way that we can have a look on the link tomorrow morning, and then we can have a short present like introduction and guideline from Zero tomorrow afternoon.
Excellent. I think we are agreed.
Đây tức là trong cái phần các anh chị xem cái chương trình sáng ngày mai, cái dòng thứ hai ấy, thì nó có cái là cái example cho các cái tác động thứ cấp, tác động sơ cấp, thứ cấp vân vân ấy. Thì nó có một cái link ở đấy, thì các anh chị về mở đấy ra chúng ta đọc trước trong sáng ngày mai, chiều ngày mai thì ông sẽ giảng cụ thể về cái phần này.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I can talk about. would there be any questions for now, or are there any questions concerning Gerard's presentation?
Anh chị có câu hỏi gì không ạ? Yeah, I can see there are no question at the moment.
Okay.
So we can do the self-study tomorrow morning and can send you the question through the link.
Excellent.
Yes, yes.
Okay, if I can just add one thing. We have local facilitator, Mr. Vu.
Yes, tomorrow morning.
I just wanted to alert Mr. Vu that tomorrow may be a bit different from today because we have some exercises, and he will be helping with making the groups. Another thing I wanted to point out is that tomorrow is when we do these exercises of the response matrix, vulnerability, and exposure, trying to do an exercise. And this is the excellent moment for the disaster people to be there. It's actually essential for them to be there. So I know we had talked about this before. So just to point that out. Otherwise, what I can say about tomorrow is that it's going to be a heavier day than today. Because first of all, you'll have the self-guided session, and the self-guided session is really packed. There's quite a lot in it. And even in the afternoon, we have pretty long sessions. But you're equal to the task. We look forward to tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Zero. So yeah, I also would like to ask Mr. Wu to organize the class tomorrow morning, and then we can do the self-study by groups, and then maybe question to send to you through the link, and also we can have more detailed discussion in the afternoon with Zero.
Excellent. At this point, I'd like to really thank Elizabeth. Elizabeth, thank you very much from South Africa. Gerard from Ireland, and Rose is my colleague here in Geneva, and of course the participants and Lam. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. You're doing an excellent job. Without you, I don't know what we are going to do. That translation is really helping us, and keep it up for 5 days. So
yes, I will.
You're a strong one. Okay, so I really don't have anything else to add. If there's somebody who has something to say, please go ahead.
I'd just like to thank you for the translation. I think that worked well, and hopefully it made it easier for colleagues to follow the argument and the ideas. But thank you for that.
Yes, I also would like to thank all the lecturers today. Thank Sam and Rose. We are hopefully to have very good, productive workshop. I myself also learned a lot today when translate your presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Have a nice morning.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Ở đấy thì ok thì là sáng ngày mai thì là như yêu cầu thì là chúng ta lớp sẽ chia theo nhóm. Thì chỗ Vũ ngày mai Vũ sẽ là phụ trách chính. Thì các anh chị chia theo nhóm là một để và làm theo các cái phần bài tập